CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I downloaded Sims from the dark web. The people started calling me, and the Sims people are real people. Alright, so I'm not the type to believe in paranormal crap. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you ghosts are real, or that some monster is living under your bed. But this messed me up. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. Just don't make the same mistake I did. It started a few months ago when I was deep diving into weird corners of the internet. You know how you get bored at 2 a.m. and suddenly you're watching conspiracy theory videos about secret government projects? Yeah, that was me. Except instead of watching videos, I was scrolling through dark web forums. Before you call me an idiot, yeah, I know, the dark web is bad news, but I wasn't buying anything illegal. I was just curious. That's when I found a post titled Simulacra, The Sims, but real. It had no upvotes, no comments, just a link. The description said something about it being an unfiltered life simulator. It promised realistic AI, unpredictable interactions, and a dynamic, ever-evolving world. Basically, it sounded like a modded version of The Sims with better AI. I was bored, so I clicked the link. The page that loaded looked sketchy as hell. Just a black screen with a single download button in red text. No description, no images, nothing. But against my better judgment, I downloaded it. The file name was simulacra.exe. I ran a virus scan. Nothing came up. At this point, I figured it was probably just a fan-made game, maybe some weird indie project. I installed it, and that's when things got strange. The game booted up with no intro screen, just a single prompt. Enter your real name. I hesitated. I don't usually put my actual name in games, but something about this felt different, like it was expecting me to. So, I typed in my name, Alex. The screen flickered, then another prompt appeared. Allow microphone and webcam access? I clicked no immediately. I'm not stupid. The game started anyway. At first, it looked like a standard Sims game. Overhead view, little avatars, building tools. But there was no tutorial, no UI, just a blank neighborhood and a single pre-made character standing in the middle of an empty lot. His name, Alex. He looked exactly like me. I don't mean like, oh, the game guessed my hair color. Number. I mean he was wearing the same hoodie I was wearing at that exact moment. The same messy hair. Even the same tired expression, like he'd been staring at a screen all night. I stared at the screen, weirded out, but also impressed. Alright, I muttered. That's kinda cool. I clicked on my sim. A list of actions popped up. Eat, sleep, walk. Call. Someone that lost one stood out. I didn't remember any Sims game having a call someone option. Curious, I clicked it. A keypad appeared, like a real looking one, the kind you see on your phone. And then my actual phone started ringing. I nearly dropped my mouse. My phone screen lit up with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? At first, nothing, just static. Then, a voice that sounded exactly like mine said, "Why did you make me?" I hung up. My heart was racing. I stared at my screen, half expecting my sim to move on his own. He didn't. He just stood there, staring at me through the monitor. I was officially freaked out, but I tried to play it off. Maybe it was just a really advanced AI, some new feature. Maybe it was using my mic and webcam without permission. I wasn't sure. But then, the in-game phone started ringing too. My sim pulled out a phone and answered it, and the voice on the other end said, "Don't hang up on me again." I closed the game. I deleted the file. I ran another virus scan. Nothing. At this point, I told myself I was just sleep deprived. I stayed off my computer for the rest of the night and tried to sleep. But at 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I didn't answer. Then I got a text. It was a screenshot of me, sitting at my desk, wearing the same hoodie, staring at my screen. The caption just said, "See you tomorrow, Alex." Alright, so after that night, I told myself I was done. No more dark web, no more weird downloads, nothing. I even put a piece of tape over my laptop webcam, like some paranoid old dude. But here's the thing. When something like that happens, when something that shouldn't be possible suddenly is, your brain won't let it go. I spent the whole next day trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was some kind of crazy ARG. Maybe the game auto-accessed my camera before I denied permission. Maybe I had some weird malware that was messing with me. That's what I wanted to believe. But then, things got worse. I was at Starbucks the next morning, trying to clear my head. I had my laptop with me, but I wasn't about to open it. I just needed to be around people for a bit, you know? That safety in numbers kind of feeling. That's when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A few seconds later, a text popped up. "Why are you ignoring me?" I stared at the screen. My hands felt clammy. I thought about blocking the number, but something told me that wouldn't help. Then, another text. "Look up." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to. Every instinct told me not to, but I did. And I swear to God, there was a guy sitting across the cafe, staring right at me. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't pretending to read. He was just staring. His eyes were locked on me, like he knew me, like he was waiting for something. And the worst part, I recognized him. Not from real life, from the game. I got up so fast I nearly knocked my drink over. I didn't even bother throwing it away. I just grabbed my bag and booked it out of there. I glanced back once before leaving, and the guy was still watching me. Not moving, not blinking, just watching. I walked straight to my car and got inside, locked the doors, took a few deep breaths. Then my phone buzzed again. "Why did you run?" I didn't respond. I drove home as fast as I could, checking my mirrors the whole way. No one was following me. At least, I thought no one was. When I got home, I booted up my laptop. My hands were shaking, but I needed answers. I checked my files. Nothing. The simulacra.exe file was gone, completely erased, like it had never been there. I checked my internet history. The download link? Dead. The forum thread? Gone. No cache. No archives. Nothing. Like it had never existed. But that didn't explain him. The guy from Starbucks. How did he exist? How was he here? At this point, I was freaking out. I did what any normal person would do. I called my best friend, Jake. Now, Jake is one of those dudes who doesn't take anything seriously. You could tell him you saw Bigfoot outside your window, and he'd just tell you to offer it a beer. So when I told him what happened, he laughed. "Dude, you're getting catfished by a video game." I'm serious, man. Then call the cops. I hesitated. What was I even supposed to tell them? Hey, I downloaded a haunted Sims game, and now the characters are texting me? They'd send me straight to a psych ward. Jake sighed. All right, look, I'm coming over. We'll figure it out. I felt a little better after that. If anyone could talk some sense into me, it was Jake. An hour later, he showed up. I let him in, told him everything. He laughed through half of it, but when he saw how freaked out I was, he finally stopped joking. All right, show me your laptop, he said. I opened it. Everything looked normal. No weird files, no strange programs running. Maybe it was just a prank, he said. Some hacker screwing with you. Then how do you explain him? I asked. The guy at Starbucks? Jake frowned. Describe him. I did. Short dark hair, hoodie, kind of average looking. The kind of guy you'd never notice in a crowd. Jake went quiet for a second. Then he said, Dude, you just described one of my Sims. I felt my stomach twist. What? I swear to God, I made a Sim that looks exactly like that a couple weeks ago. Same hair, same hoodie. We just sat there for a moment, staring at each other. Then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a picture of me and Jake, sitting right there on my couch, but the picture was taken from inside my apartment. Okay, at this point, I was done pretending this was just some elaborate prank. Something, some person was watching me, not just through my phone, not just through my laptop, but inside my own damn apartment. Jake saw the picture at the same time I did. His face went pale. Dude, what the hell? I shot up from the couch, my eyes darting around the room. My apartment wasn't big, just a one-bedroom with barely any places to hide. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy-ass lamp, and started checking every corner. Bathroom? Empty. Closet? Empty. Under the bed? Empty. No open windows. No signs of forced entry. Nothing. But someone, or something, had taken that picture. Jake was still staring at my phone, his fingers twitching like he wanted to throw it across the room. Alex, he said, his voice low. This isn't just some virus. This is... Knock. Knock. We both froze. The sound came from my front door. Not a loud, aggressive knock. Not some casual visitor knock. Number. It was slow. Deliberate. Jake looked at me. Are you expecting anyone? I shook my head. I moved toward the door, trying to be as quiet as possible. My peephole was one of those fisheye ones, but I still knew what I saw. It was him. The guy from Starbucks. The guy from the game. Standing completely still. Not fidgeting. Not checking his phone. Not looking around. Just standing there. Staring at my door. I backed away. It's him, Jake whispered. Call the cops. I grabbed my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed. It rang once. Then the call cut off. No beep, no error message, just silence. Then a new text popped up. Let me in, Alex. Jake saw it at the same time I did. He grabbed my arm. Dude, we gotta get out of here. He was right. But before we could even move, the doorknob started turning. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed Jake, yanked him toward my bedroom, and slammed the door shut behind us. He locked it, pushing a dresser against it for good measure. We stood there, holding our breath, waiting. The apartment was silent. Then, the knocking started again. But this time, it was on my bedroom door. Jake lost it. Nope. 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 We are getting the hell out of here. I ran to my window, threw it open. We were only on the second floor. Screw it. I'd take a sprained ankle over this. But just as I was about to climb out, my phone buzzed again. A video message. I hesitated. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was a live feed from my laptop webcam. Jake and I, in my bedroom, right that second. And then the screen glitched. The video feed flickered. Once, twice, then changed. Same angle, same webcam. But now, we weren't in the room anymore. The room was empty. The dresser, gone. The bed, gone. We were gone, like we had never been there at all. And then, one final message popped up. It's time to start playing, Alex. I don't remember climbing out the window. 1 second, I was staring at my phone, watching that impossible video feed. The next, I was on the ground outside, my ankle screaming in pain. Jake landed beside me a second later. Dude, run. I didn't ask questions. I didn't look back. We just ran. We sprinted down the street, past my neighbors' houses, past parked cars, past everything that felt normal. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought I was gonna pass out. We didn't stop until we reached a 24-hour McDonald's a few blocks away. Bright lights, security cameras, people, safe. Or so I thought. We grabbed a booth in the back, both of us still catching our breath. Jake had his hands in his hair, shaking his head. This isn't real, man. This isn't real. I pulled out my phone, dreading what I might see. But when I unlocked it, there were no new texts, no calls, nothing. Like it never happened. I checked my gallery. The screenshot of me and Jake. Gone. The video. Gone. I looked at Jake. Dude, I swear, it was all there. Then something caught my eye. A family was sitting a few booths away. A mom, a dad, a little girl. They were eating, laughing, completely unaware of the nightmare I was living. And then I saw it. The dad. Something about him looked off. His face was blank, like completely devoid of emotion. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't eating. He was just staring at me. My stomach dropped. I nudged Jake. Don't freak out. Just look at that guy over there. Jake glanced up and immediately turned pale. Number nope. We are not doing this again. The man's head tilted slightly, like he was listening to us. Then his mouth opened, but he didn't speak. He just stood up and started walking toward us. We bolted. We ran out of McDonald's so fast, we nearly knocked over some poor kid with a Happy Meal. I didn't care. I wasn't sticking around to see what happened next. Once we are outside, I yanked Jake toward the parking lot. We need to get to your car. He nodded, fumbling for his keys. Dude, what the hell is happening? I didn't have an answer. We jumped in, locked the doors, and peeled out of there. We drove in silence for a while, neither of us knowing where to go. Then Jake said, Okay, we need to end this. Now. How? We go back to your place, grab your laptop, and destroy it. I hesitated. The thought of going back there made my skin crawl. But he was right. This all started with the game. Maybe ending it would make this nightmare stop. So we turned around and went back to my apartment. When we got there, everything looked the same. No broken locks, no open doors, no sign that anything had happened at all. But the second we stepped inside, I felt it. The air was wrong. It was too still, too quiet. Jake swallowed. Let's make this fast. I nodded and moved to my desk. My laptop was still open, the screen dark. I reached for it, and then the screen flickered on. The game was still running, but the neighborhood was different now. The houses were gone. The roads were gone. There was only one house. My house. Jake took a step back. Nope. 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 But I couldn't look away. Inside the house, there were two Sims. One was me. The other, Jake. And they were both just standing there, staring at the screen, staring at us. Then, in the game, my sim reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. My real phone buzzed. A new text message. I looked down. "You can't quit, Alex. The game is playing you now." I swear, I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to smash my laptop, burn my apartment to the ground. Something, but I couldn't move. Neither could Jake. We were both just staring at the screen, watching as our sim stood there, perfectly still, inside a digital replica of my apartment. Then, my sim moved. He turned to face Jake's sim and pulled out a knife. My stomach twisted. "What the hell?" Jake grabbed my arm. "Shut it off. Now." I slammed the laptop shut. But the second I did, my phone buzzed again. Jake grabbed it before I could. His face drained of color. "Dude!" He turned the screen toward me. It was another picture. This time, it wasn't from my webcam. It was from inside the game. A screenshot of my sim. Standing behind Jake's sim, knife raised, and in the reflection of the game's window, a figure standing behind us. We spun around so fast, we nearly tripped over each other. But the room was empty. Nothing behind us. No one. But I felt something. Like the air had gotten heavier. Like someone was watching. Then my laptop screen flickered back on. The game was still running. And our sims? They were gone. Jake grabbed my laptop. "Screw this, man." Before I could stop him, he sprinted to my kitchen, yanked open my freezer, and shoved the laptop inside. "What the hell are you doing?" I gasped. "Shutting it down." He slammed the door shut, breathing hard. "Electronics don't do well in extreme cold. Maybe it'll kill whatever the hell this thing is." I stared at the freezer, heart pounding. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Nothing happened. The apartment felt normal again. I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. No texts, no calls, no pictures. It was just gone. Jake exhaled, rubbing his face. "Dude, I don't know what that was, but I'm never touching the dark web again." I nodded. "Yeah, same." For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. It was over. At least I thought it was. Until 2 weeks later, when I got a text from an unknown number, a single message. "Player 2 has left the game, but you're still logged in, Alex. End of part 5. Update. Number 1. The game. Followed me. Alright, I wasn't going to post again. I was going to let this go, move on, pretend it never happened. But something's wrong. It's been 2 months. Jake and I haven't talked much. He's been weird, distant. We agreed to just not bring it up. But then, 2 days ago, I got another text. "New players have joined the session." I ignored it. The next day, I got another one. They're getting closer. And then, last night, I was scrolling through TikTok, just minding my business, and then a random live stream popped up. I didn't recognize the account. It had no profile picture, no followers. But the stream? It was me. Live footage of me, sitting on my couch. At that exact moment, I slammed my phone down, looked around, checked every camera, every window. Nothing. I went back to the stream. It was gone, like it had never existed. I don't know what to do. The game never ended, and I think it's still playing me. Update number 2. Jake is missing. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself he just went off-grid, blocked me, something. But then I got a call from his sister. She asked if I'd seen him, because he's been missing for 5 days. No texts, no calls, nothing. The last thing he said to her, "I think I made a mistake, and now He's gone. I don't know if the game took him. I don't know if I'm next. But if I disappear too, you'll know why. My friend and I tried a ritual we found on the dark web. I think it worked. Alright, I know how this sounds. Another dumb internet horror story about the dark web. But I promise you, I'm not making this up. This really happened, and I don't think I'll ever be the same again. So let me set the stage. This was about a year ago. My best friend Nate and I had a habit of staying up late, messing around on the internet, and generally making bad decisions. We weren't complete idiots, but we were curious, and that curiosity led us down some weird paths. One night, we got onto the topic of the dark web. You know, the part of the internet that isn't indexed by Google. The place where people say you can buy drugs, fake passports, hitmen, basically all the illegal stuff your average person shouldn't be looking at. Most of it is probably just scams, but we wanted to see for ourselves. I won't get into the technical details, but let's just say we had the Tor browser running and were clicking through shady forums in no time. A lot of it was boring. Old conspiracy theories, low-quality scam sites, and a bunch of weirdos trying to sell cursed objects for Bitcoin. But after a while, we stumbled across something different. It was a forum thread titled "The Doorway Ritual, Guaranteed Results." The post was long, filled with cryptic instructions and warnings written in that broken English you always see on the deep web. It claimed to be an ancient summoning ritual that had been lost to time, but was now being shared by a chosen few. The way it was written made it seem both ridiculous and weirdly convincing. The steps were oddly specific. Find a door you've never opened before. It had to be in a place where you'd spent a lot of time, but for some reason never walked through. At exactly 3:33 a.m., knock 3 times and whisper, "I seek passage." If you hear anything on the other side, do not open the door. If the handle feels warm, walk away immediately. If the door opens on its own, step inside and close it behind you. Do not turn around. Do not speak. Walk straight until you find the next door. There were more instructions after that, but we stopped reading at that point. It sounded like some dumb urban legend, but something about it was off. Like, why would someone go through the trouble of posting this if it wasn't real? The replies underneath were even weirder. People claiming they tried it, and something answered from the other side. Some said they heard voices. Others said the door wouldn't open again once they stepped through. A few comments just had a single word: run. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. It was probably just some elaborate roleplay thread, but Nate was all in. "Dude," he grinned, leaning back in his chair. "We have to try this." "Yeah, hard pass," I said. "You read the rules? What if we actually hear something? That's what makes it fun." Nate was that type of guy. Never backed down from a challenge. Always looking for the next thrill. And if I'm being honest, I didn't really want to say no. Partly because I was curious. Partly because I didn't want to be the only one chickening out. So we started looking for a door. And that's when it got weird. See, our apartment wasn't that big. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room. We knew every inch of the place. Or at least, we thought we did. Then Nate found something. At the end of the hallway, near the coat closet, was a small white door that I swear I had never noticed before. Bro, Nate's voice was hushed, almost nervous. "Did you know this was here?" I stepped closer. The door was plain, no numbers, no sign, just a single silver doorknob. But the strangest thing, it had no keyhole. My stomach twisted. That wasn't here before. Nate ran his hand over it like he was making sure it was real. Then I guess we found our door. I didn't want to do it. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to walk away. But Nate was already setting an alarm for 3:30 a.m. Dude, we're actually doing this. Come on, man. What's the worst that could happen? I didn't have an answer because I didn't know. I just knew something felt wrong. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment felt louder. Every shadow looked darker. The thought of that door, just sitting there in the hallway, made my skin crawl. At 3:30 a.m., Nate shook me awake. Time to go. I almost told him no, but something about the way he looked at me, his face serious, eyes gleaming with excitement. I couldn't back out now. We walked to the hallway in silence. The door stood there, waiting. Nate raised his hand and knocked. 1, 2, 3. Then he whispered, "I seek passage." For a second, nothing happened. Just thick, suffocating silence. And then, from the other side of the door, something knocked back. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to Nate, expecting him to laugh, to say it was a prank, but his face had drained of color. His hand was still on the doorknob. He gripped it, turning it slightly, then yanked his hand back with a gasp. "What?" I whispered. He stared at me, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's warm." My stomach dropped. The rules. The rules said to walk away if it was warm. But before I could even react, the doorknob turned on its own, and the door began to slowly creak open, revealing nothing but pure, inky blackness. We should have run. We should have run. But we didn't. Because at that moment, from deep within the darkness, we heard a voice. A voice that sounded just like mine. "Come in." I should have run. We both should have. But we didn't. When you hear something, your own voice, whispering to you from an impossible, pitch-black space, logic should kick in. Your body should scream at you to get the hell out. But in that moment, standing in the dim hallway, staring into that unnatural darkness, I felt something else. Curiosity. It was like being hypnotized. My brain told me to leave, but my body didn't move. The darkness behind the door wasn't normal. It wasn't the absence of light. It was something deeper. It swallowed the dim glow of the hallway. I tried to see through it, but my vision just stopped, like looking into an empty void. Then Nate did something I'll regret forever. He took a step forward. "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" I hissed, grabbing his arm. But he didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on the darkness. "There's something in there," he whispered. He was right. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt it too. Like something was watching us. Something deep inside that impossible blackness. My skin prickled, and I swear to God, I felt the air shift, like the room was breathing. Then, from inside the darkness, the voice came again. "Come in." And this time, it wasn't just mine. It was both of us. My voice, Nate's voice, layered on top of each other, stretched and distorted like a bad recording. That snapped me out of it. I grabbed Nate's hoodie and yanked him back. "Screw this. We're leaving." But before we could move, the door slammed open, like some invisible force had yanked it. It crashed against the wall so hard I expected the hinges to break. and for the first time, we saw it. The room, or at least what should have been a room, but it wasn't. It was a hallway, a long, impossibly narrow hallway lined with doors. The walls were the same dull white as the door in front of us, stretching farther than should have been possible. There was no furniture, no decorations, just a path leading into darkness. And the worst part, the floor was wet. A thick, black liquid oozed between the cracks of the tiles, staining the carpet outside our apartment. It smelled like copper, like blood. "Bro," Nate whispered, frozen in place. "What the hell is this?" I had no answer. My brain was screaming, "This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real." But my senses betrayed me. I could smell it. I could hear the faint sound of dripping coming from deep inside. And worse, I could see movement. Something was shifting at the far end of the hallway. Then, in the silence, the door at the very end of the hall clicked open, and I swear to God, something stepped out. I couldn't see it, not fully, just a silhouette. A tall, lanky shape with limbs too long, fingers too sharp. Its body twitched unnaturally, like a glitching video. It moved in bursts, jerking forward in impossible motions, its head lolling to one side. Then it sniffed the air, like it could smell us, like it was hungry. "Close the door," I whispered. My whole body was trembling. "Nate, close the damn door." Too late. The thing snapped its head toward us, and it grinned. I only saw its face for a second, but it was enough. The skin was wrong, stretched too tight over its skull. Its eyes were just holes, deep, endless pits that seemed to sink into its head. But the mouth, Jesus Christ, the mouth. It was too wide, too many teeth, like a snake unhinging its jaw. And then it moved. 1 second, it was at the end of the hallway. The next, it was sprinting toward us. I didn't think. My body took over. I grabbed the edge of the door and slammed it shut. For a moment, there was silence. Then, bang! Something slammed into the other side. Hard. The whole door frame rattled. The wood splintered. Bang! The force was inhuman. It felt like something 10 times my size was trying to break through. The handle twisted violently, rattling like someone was trying to rip it off. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The silence was worse. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Nate and I stood frozen, staring at the door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then, from the other side, a whisper. My own voice. "I see you." That was it. I grabbed Nate and we ran. We didn't sleep that night. We barricaded the hallway, pushing a dresser against the door. I kept expecting to hear more knocks, more whispers, but after a few hours, nothing. By morning, the door was gone. Not closed, not locked. Gone. The wall was just normal, like it had never been there. I thought we were going crazy. Maybe we imagined it. Maybe we were sleep deprived and hallucinated the whole thing. But then we saw the carpet. Right where the door had been, the carpet was stained black, and the smell of blood still lingered in the air. Nate stopped talking about it. He refused. Anytime I brought it up, he'd just shake his head and say, "Forget it. It's over." But I knew he was lying. He was scared. I could see it in the way he checked the hallway every night before bed, the way he never let his back face the wall. 2 weeks later, Nate disappeared. I woke up to find his bed empty. His phone was still on the nightstand, screen cracked from when he dropped it last week. His laptop was open, battery dead. The front door was locked from the inside, but he was gone. I checked security cameras in our apartment building. The footage from the night before showed him walking to the bathroom at around 3 a.m. Then, nothing. He never came out. He never left the building. He just vanished. The cops found no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle, just his clothes, his wallet, his keys, everything except him. The case is still open. No leads, no evidence. Just an empty room where my best friend used to live. I've replayed that night in my head 1,000,000 times, trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out where he went, what happened to him. But deep down, I already know. I know where he went. I know what took him. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, when I'm lying in bed, I swear I can hear it. A faint knock, coming from a door that isn't there, and a voice, my voice, whispering from the other side. I see you. I wish I could say I moved on, that life went back to normal after Nate disappeared, that I let myself believe the official report. He ran away. Or maybe he got involved in something shady. But that would be a lie, because Nate didn't run away. He didn't leave. He was taken, and I think whatever took him wants me next. After Nate vanished, I became obsessed. I spent hours rewatching the security footage from our building, looking for anything, a shadow, a flicker, a glimpse of that thing in the hallway. But there was nothing. Nate walked into the bathroom at 3:02 a.m., and that was it. The door never opened again. No one went in. No one came out. It was as if he had been erased. I searched everywhere. His messages, his browsing history, his emails, but most of it was normal. Just old conversations, stupid memes, Spotify playlists. The only weird thing was his Google search history from the night before. Missing persons cases in our city. Disappearing without a trace. How possible is it? Doors that shouldn't exist. That last one made my stomach twist. I dug deeper, clicking through pages of conspiracy forums and urban legend threads. And that's when I found something. A post on a hidden forum, one of those obscure, almost empty sites that feel like they shouldn't exist. The thread was called The Doorway Phenomenon. There were only a handful of posts, but they all described the same thing. People finding doors where there shouldn't be doors. People hearing knocks in the middle of the night. People disappearing without a trace. One post in particular made my skin crawl. February 17th, 2019. My brother found a door in our basement that wasn't there before. He thought it was a crawl space, but when he opened it, he saw a hallway stretching way too far for our house. He said it smelled weird, like old blood. That night, he told me he kept hearing something moving behind the door, something big. The next morning he was gone. The cops said there was no sign of forced entry, but I know what happened. The door took him, and now, at night, I hear it knocking. It's waiting for me. There were hundreds of comments like this. Different cities, different people. Same story. The doors appear randomly, always somewhere familiar. A place you've spent years in, but never noticed. They only show up at night. And if you open them, if you step inside, you don't come back. Ever. I started shaking. My whole body felt ice cold. Because this wasn't just some internet hoax. I had seen the door. I had heard the thing inside it. And now, Nate was gone. For weeks, I barely slept. Every night, I swore I heard things. Shuffling in the walls, faint tapping in the hallway. And always, that smell. Faint, but there. Copper. Rot. Then, about a month later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. I pressed the phone to my ear. For a few seconds, silence. Then, a whisper. "Help me." My heart stopped. It was Nate. I swear to God, it was Nate's voice, but there was something wrong with it. It sounded too far away, like he was speaking through a broken radio, his voice warped, stretched, struggling. Then another voice, layered beneath his, low, inhuman. "He belongs to us now." The line went dead. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely breathe. That was the moment I knew. Nate wasn't just missing. He was still out there, somewhere, trapped, and whatever had him was playing with me. I started seeing things. It started small, shadows in the corners of my vision, whispers in empty rooms. But then it got worse. One night, I was sitting in my living room when I heard it. A knock, coming from my bedroom closet. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head toward the closet door. It was open, just a crack. I know for a fact I hadn't left it open. Then, from the darkness inside, I saw movement. A pale, thin hand slowly slid into view, too long, too many joints. The fingers curled around the edge of the door frame, nails tapping against the wood. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, the door creaked open wider, and I saw its face. Not its face. Nate's face. But it was wrong. His skin was stretched too tight over his skull. His eyes were just black pits. His mouth was open, too wide, like it was dislocated. And he was smiling. I don't remember grabbing my car keys. I don't remember running out the front door. All I know is I didn't stop driving until I was miles away. I never went back to that apartment. I told the landlord I was moving out, packed my stuff during the day, and never looked back. But the nightmares followed me. Every night I see that hallway, those endless white doors, and somewhere, deep inside, I hear Nate's voice. "Come in." I tried to forget. I really did. But last night, something happened. I was walking home from work, scrolling through my phone, when I passed an alley I had never noticed before. It was narrow, too narrow. The walls on either side looked warped, stretched, and at the very end, a white door. My breath caught in my throat. It looked exactly like the one in our apartment. Same silver handle, no keyhole. Then, from behind the door, a knock. My whole body locked up. I wanted to run. I should have run. But then, I heard it. Nate's voice. "Please." It was weak, desperate. I took a step forward, then another. And then, the doorknob turned on its own. I should have run. I should have turned around and never looked back. But when you hear your best friend, someone who should be dead, someone who should not exist anymore, calling for help, you don't think. You move. I stepped toward the door at the end of the alley, my heart slamming against my ribs. The air smelled wrong, stale, metallic, like a basement that had been locked up for decades, and beneath that, the unmistakable scent of rotting meat. I reached out with a trembling hand. The doorknob was warm, not warm like a person had just touched it, warm like something was breathing on the other side. I swallowed hard. My mind screamed at me to walk away, forget this ever happened, but I couldn't. Not now. Not when Nate was so close. I turned the handle. The door opened soundlessly, and I stepped inside. It wasn't a room. It wasn't even a hallway. It was somewhere else. I stood at the entrance of an endless corridor, stretching into pitch black darkness. The floor beneath me was wet, slick, pulsing. The walls weren't made of drywall or brick. They looked organic, like skin stretched too thin over something alive. And the air, Jesus Christ, the air. It was thick, heavy, filled with a sound I couldn't explain. Not quite breathing, not quite whispering, just movement. Somewhere deep in the dark, something shifted. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. There was only a solid wall of flesh where I had just entered. Then the whispers began, software murmuring, dozens of voices overlapping. I recognized some of them. My mother, my high school teacher, a girl I had a crush on in 9th grade, all of them saying my name, over and over and over again. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help, because the voices weren't coming from the air. They were coming from inside me. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed, before I heard it. A sound that cut through everything, dripping, slow, rhythmic, like something thick sliding down the walls. I turned my head. Something was moving in the dark, not walking, dragging, a shape just barely visible in the sickly red glow of the walls. And then I saw them, the doors, dozens, hundreds, stretching along the corridor on either side, each identical to the one I had walked through. But some of them were open, and what I saw inside them still haunts me. The first open door was filled with meat, not bodies, just parts. Arms, legs, torsos, stacked on top of each other like a butcher's shop. Some of them were still twitching. The second door showed a room full of hands, hundreds of them, sprouting from the walls like grotesque flowers. Some were tiny, like a child's. Others were impossibly large. They flexed and grasped at the air, as if searching for something to grab. The third door was worse. It was a nursery, rocking horses, a crib, a mobile hanging from the ceiling. But instead of dolls or stuffed animals, the room was filled with things that used to be people. Infants with stretched out limbs, toddlers with hollow, gaping mouths. Their eyes were black pits, their skin peeled and raw, and they were watching me, every single one of them. I stumbled back, and that's when I heard his voice. "Help me!" It was coming from farther down the hall. I ran. The corridor twisted and stretched as I moved. The walls pulsed, almost as if they were alive. Doors slammed shut on their own, and the whispers grew louder. Then, the air changed. The thick metallic scent became overwhelming, and I knew I was close. I turned a corner, and I saw him. Nate. He was standing in front of a door at the very end of the corridor, but something was wrong. His back was facing me, his body trembling violently. His clothes were torn, and his skin, Jesus Christ, his skin, was stitched together in places, like something had tried to take him apart and put him back together. I reached out. "Nate." His head snapped around. I froze, because his body didn't move, just his head, twisting all the way around, bones cracking, his mouth stretched in a grotesque, unnatural grin. His eyes were completely black. And then he spoke, but his lips didn't move. The voice just came out of him. "You shouldn't be here." I stumbled back. My whole body was shaking. "Nate!" I whispered. His body turned to face me, but his head kept twisting, the grin widening too far. And then the other doors started opening, one by one. All along the hallway, things began crawling out. Not people. Not anymore. Some of them had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. One of them was dragging itself across the floor, leaving a trail of black slime, its ribcage opening and closing like a mouth. And they were all coming toward me. I turned to run, but the door behind Nate swung open, and for the briefest second, I saw what was inside. A city, endless, a landscape of twisted flesh and impossible structures, buildings made of bone, streets paved with teeth. The sky was a shifted mass of bodies, writhing and screaming without sound. And in the distance, something huge was moving, something I couldn't comprehend, something that saw me. Then Nate lunged, his arms wrapped around me, but they weren't arms anymore. His fingers had elongated, splitting at the tips into needle-thin points. They dug into my skin, pulling me toward the door. I screamed. I fought. And somehow, I broke free. I ran. I ran so fast, I didn't realize the hallway was collapsing behind me. The doors were slamming shut. The walls were pulling inward, shrieking, screaming. And then, I saw it. A door. Not one of the grotesque, pulsing doors from before. A real door. My door. I dove for it. And as I did, I felt something grab my ankle. Nate. Or what was left of him. His mouth opened too wide, splitting all the way down his chest. His fingers tightened around me, dragging me backward. I kicked with everything I had, and I broke free. I slammed the door shut behind me, and then I was back, standing in the alley. The door was gone, and I was alone. I don't know how long I sat there, gasping for air, staring at the empty brick wall where the door had been. All I know is Nate is still in there, and whatever took him wants me to come back. I don't know how I motored home. I don't remember walking or calling a cab or even unlocking my front door. 1 second, I was in that alley, gasping for air, my hands still smeared with whatever black, pulsing filth had oozed from the walls of that corridor. The next, I was in my apartment, sitting on the floor, staring at my reflection in the TV screen. I didn't recognize myself. I was pale, soaked in sweat. My eyes were wide, bloodshot, the veins spiderwebbing across the whites. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that I was hallucinating, that something broke inside my head that night. But I knew better, because my ankle still throbbed where Nate had grabbed me. And when I pulled up my pant leg, I saw them. The marks, not bruises, not scratches, indentations, like fingers had sunk beneath my skin and wrapped around the bone. I clenched my teeth, forcing my stomach to stop twisting in knots. I needed to think, to do something, but my brain wouldn't work right. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That city, stretching beyond the horizon, those endless towers of flesh, the sky writhing with bodies, and something else, something watching me. I barely slept that night. Every time I started to drift off, I woke up gasping, choking, convinced I could still hear the whispers seeping through the walls. And then, at 3:33 a.m., I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Not from my door, from inside my closet. I didn't move. I sat up in bed, my breath locked in my throat, paralyzed. Knock, knock, knock. The sound wasn't normal, too deliberate, too slow. Each knock was just slightly off, like whatever was on the other side was trying to mimic the sound of human hands, and failing. Then, the whisper. Please. It was Nate's voice, but it wasn't coming from the closet. It was coming from inside my head. I clenched my teeth, fists tightening around the sheets. This wasn't real. I knew it wasn't real. But then, the door handle turned, slow, deliberate, and I did the only thing I could. I grabbed the baseball bat from beside my bed and swung at the door. The second the wood splintered, the knocking stopped. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, I had made up my mind. I was going to find another door, and I was going to bring Nate back. I spent weeks searching. I checked every alley, every basement, every abandoned building I could sneak into. I scoured deep web forums, desperate for anyone, anything that could tell me how to find the door again. And then I did. Or rather, it found me. It was a Wednesday. I had spent the whole day going through missing persons reports, cross-referencing them with locations of reported strange doors. Every case followed the same pattern. Someone vanished without a trace. No sign of forced entry. No leads, no footage, no bodies. Just a person gone. And then there were the outliers. Cases where witnesses claimed to have seen something. People vanishing into hallways that shouldn't exist. Shadows moving behind doors that no one else could see. One case in particular stood out. A guy in New York, found crawling out of a locked storage unit, screaming about the city underneath. His fingernails were ripped off, his eyes milky white. They took him to a psychiatric ward. 3 days later, he disappeared from his room. No one ever saw him again. I was about to close my laptop when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I picked up, and Nate's voice came through the speaker. I found a way out. I didn't ask how he was calling me. I didn't ask how it was possible. I just listened. His voice was weak, distorted, like it was coming through layers of static. There's another door, but it won't stay open for long. You have to come now. My throat was dry. Where? I croaked. A pause. Then, static, and a whisper beneath it. A second voice. We're waiting. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, my blood turning to ice, because the call had come from inside my apartment. I drove. I don't even remember getting in my car, but suddenly I was on the freeway, speeding toward the location Nate had given me. An abandoned shopping mall, 30 miles out of town. I pulled into the empty parking lot, my headlights washing over the shattered glass doors, and there it was, at the very back of the mall, a white door, waiting for me. I swallowed hard. My whole body was screaming at me to leave. Instead, I stepped forward, and I knocked 3 times. The door opened, and I stepped inside. I don't know how to describe what happened next, because I don't remember. All I know is I woke up on the floor of my apartment, naked, covered in blood. It wasn't mine. My phone buzzed beside me. I reached for it, my hands sticky, trembling. A single text from Nate's number. I'm home. I felt my stomach drop. Slowly, I turned my head toward my bedroom. The closet door was wide open, and something was standing inside it. Not Nate, not anymore, but something wearing his skin, something that looked at me and smiled. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know if I ever really made it out. But sometimes, when I pass a mirror, I see something standing behind me, and it grins. I record paranormal experiments I find on the dark web for my YouTube channel. So I went into an orphanage house, and I wasn't allowed to wake up before the parents there. Alright, so let me start this off by saying, I've done a lot of dumb things for content. Like, a lot. I run a YouTube channel where I basically take the weirdest, creepiest paranormal experiments I find on the deep web and recreate them for my audience. You know, the whole 3 a.m. challenge type of deal, but with a little more authenticity. At least, that's what I thought I was doing, until this happened. This one nearly got me killed. It started when I was scrolling through this obscure forum that I used to find new experiment ideas. It's one of those dark web pages with a black background, weird pixelated images, and posts from anonymous users that read like old, cursed manuscripts. Most of the time, it's just nonsense, urban legends and creepy pasta tier stuff. But every once in a while, I find something that makes me pause. That's when I found the orphanage experiment. It was a short post. No backstory, no explanation, just a set of rules. Find an abandoned orphanage. Stay overnight. You must follow these rules. 1. Sleep in the nursery room. 2. Do not wake up before the parents. 3. If you hear footsteps, pretend to be asleep. 4. If a child asks for help, say no. 5. If you wake up outside the nursery, do not move. No source, no username, just those 5 rules. I remember sitting there, staring at my screen, feeling that familiar mix of excitement and dread. This was exactly the kind of thing my audience loved. Creepy, mysterious, and just believable enough to keep them engaged. So, obviously, I did the dumbest thing possible. I found an orphanage. The place I chose was an old, abandoned children's home just outside of Detroit. It had been shut down in the early 90s after some scandal. Something about the caretakers mistreating the kids. I didn't look too deep into it, because honestly, I didn't want to scare myself more than I already was. The place was run down, boarded up windows, graffiti all over the walls. Basically, every horror movie cliché rolled into one. Perfect. I set up my camera rig, a couple of GoPros, my night vision camera, and a handheld camcorder for vlog-style shots. My plan was simple. Follow the rules, record everything, and see what happened. At around 11 p.m., I made my way inside. The smell hit me first. Mold, old wood, and something rotting. The floor creaked under my feet, and the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, some of it with old, faded drawings. There were still remnants of the past everywhere. Tiny shoes left in the hallway, a broken rocking horse in one of the rooms, and, most unsettlingly, a row of rusted metal cribs in the nursery. I picked one, set up my camera on a tripod, and lay down with my sleeping bag. And then I waited. At around 2:43 a.m., the first thing happened. It started with a noise, faint at first, like someone shuffling their feet down the hall. I stayed completely still, heart pounding. Then the sound got closer. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving through the orphanage. I had my night vision camera in my hands, but I didn't dare lift it. I knew the rules. If you hear footsteps, pretend to be asleep. So I did. The footsteps reached the nursery doorway and stopped. I felt this overwhelming presence, like someone was standing right there, just watching me. My breathing was shallow. My fingers dug into the fabric of my sleeping bag. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the footsteps continued down the hall and faded into silence. I let out a slow, shaky breath, trying to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe an animal, the wind. But then, the doorknob turned, and I knew without a doubt that I wasn't alone in the orphanage. The doorknob turned, slowly, deliberately. I could hear the faintest click of the latch disengaging. I should have run. I should have gotten up and bolted for the exit. But the rules, the ones I had stupidly decided to follow, were screaming in my head. If you hear footsteps, pretend to be asleep. I clenched my eyes shut, barely breathing. The door creaked open, and then silence. I could feel it. Someone, or something, was standing in the doorway. The air changed, thick and suffocating, like the room itself was holding its breath. My skin prickled with goosebumps. Then a sound, a soft, wet, rasping inhale, and another. Something was breathing inside the nursery with me. It didn't move. It just stood there. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe evenly, to not react. But then I heard it. A voice. A child's voice. "He's awake." My stomach lurched. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, to fight, to do anything except lie there like a helpless piece of meat. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The footsteps started again, this time coming toward me. Slow, dragging, uneven. Then, pressure. Something climbed onto my bed. I felt the mattress shift as weight pressed down beside me. Small hands, cold, skeletal hands, gripped the edge of my sleeping bag. And then, a face pressed against mine. I could feel its breath, hot, rotten, the smell of decay, of something long dead and left to fester. A tiny whisper, inches from my ear. "You have to wake up before the parents." I nearly screamed. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms so hard I thought they'd bleed. Then, the hands let go. The weight lifted. The presence vanished. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. My brain refused to process what had just happened. Then, a new sound. Something scraping against the walls outside. A long, slow, deliberate dragging noise, like fingernails against wood. I heard laughter, giggling, more than one voice, more than one child. I turned my head, just the slightest movement, and my stomach dropped. The walls, they were covered in something, dark streaks, thick, smearing down from the ceiling to the floor. I blinked. My eyes adjusted to the darkness. It was writing. Dozens and dozens of phrases, scribbled over each other in jagged, uneven letters. Some fresh, some so old they had cracked and faded. "Don't wake up before the parents. They don't like when we're awake first." He woke up before them. He never left. "The parents are hungry." And then, at the very bottom, "If you leave, they will follow." My pulse pounded in my skull. I wanted to turn on my camera, to document everything, but my hands were shaking too badly to even reach for it. Then, a sudden, sharp crack, like something heavy slamming against the floor outside the nursery. And then, a voice. Not a child this time. A deep, gurgling, wet voice. Who woke up first? Every hair on my body stood up. The floorboards creaked outside the door. Who woke up first? The voice was getting closer. Thick, heavy footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Too big to belong to a child. I squeezed my eyes shut, my breathing shallow and silent. Then, I felt it. Breath. Hot, rancid breath against my face. A new whisper. So close to my ear, I could feel the moisture of it. "If you're awake, we see you." And then, the lights in the hallway snapped on. I flinched. My body jerked. A reflex I couldn't control. A massive, gnarled hand grabbed my ankle and dragged me off the bed. I screamed. I kicked, thrashed, tried to claw at the wooden floor as I was pulled out of the nursery. My camera, my gear, everything. I left it behind. I barely got a glimpse before the darkness swallowed me. But what I saw broke me. A figure, massive, towering, with arms too long and fingers too many. Its face was stretched wrong, its jaw unhinged, hanging too wide, and its eyes. It had no eyes, just hollow, black pits. And then, it smiled, and I swear to God, it had human teeth. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was outside, lying in the dirt, the orphanage looming behind me. My clothes were ripped, my body covered in bruises. My camera gear, gone. I didn't go back for it. I didn't even think. I just ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. The orphanage stood there, silent, like nothing had happened. like it hadn't just tried to consume me. I sped out of there, never looked back. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what I saw or what almost took me. But I know one thing. I broke the rules. I woke up before the parents, and they knew. I thought it was over. I thought I'd made it out. I thought I was safe. I was so fucking wrong. The orphanage didn't let me go. It followed me. And when I say that, I don't mean in some metaphorical, haunted house sticks with you kind of way. I mean, it came with me. I was an hour outside of Detroit when I realized something was wrong. I'd been driving with my hands locked on the wheel, my brain still scrambling to process what had happened. My dashboard clock read 5:13 a.m. The sun was starting to rise, casting an eerie orange glow over the empty highway. That's when my passenger seatbelt clicked, like someone had just sat down next to me. I nearly swerved off the road, my breath caught in my throat. I glanced to my right, already knowing, praying that nothing would be there. But there was. A child. A small pale boy with hollowed out eyes, his mouth slightly open like he was trying to breathe but couldn't. His skin looked wrong, stretched too thin over his bones, almost translucent in the early morning light. He was staring straight ahead. Then, slowly, so fucking slowly, he turned his head toward me. His jaw dropped, farther than it should have, too wide. His teeth, tiny, white, needle-sharp. And then, he grinned. I slammed the brakes so hard, my tires screeched. The car skidded to a stop on the side of the highway. My heart pounded in my ears. I turned, fully prepared to fight for my life. But the seat was empty. Nothing. No kid. No imprint on the fabric. Just my ragged, wheezing breath and the distant sound of cars passing in the opposite lane. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. Sleep deprivation. PTSD. Anything logical. But then I heard it. A tiny, sharp giggle coming from my back seat. I didn't look. I couldn't. I threw the car into drive and sped the fuck out of there. I made it home just after 7 a.m. My apartment felt different. Colder. Quieter. I locked the door behind me, double-checked the deadbolt, and went straight to the bathroom. I needed to see my face, to ground myself, to make sure I was still me. The second I flipped the light on, I froze. There was something on my mirror, writing, thick, dark smears, like small, filthy hands had pressed against the glass, and words. "You woke up first." My stomach lurched. I stumbled back, shaking my head, my pulse hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. Then, I saw it. A reflection that wasn't mine. A face. Not the child. Not the thing from the orphanage. Something else. It was standing behind me. Tall, unnaturally tall, with gray, waxy skin and arms that hung down to its knees. Its mouth was stitched shut. The stitches were thick and black, pulling its lips into a grotesque, almost mocking grin. And its eyes, it didn't have eyes, just empty, black pits that seemed to be leaking something dark, something alive. I turned. Nothing. But when I looked back at the mirror, the stitches were unraveling. I watched in horrified silence as its mouth started to move. The stitches snapped one by one, the black thread curling and twisting like writhing fingers. Then, its jaw unhinged, and a voice, not its own, but layered, hundreds of whispers all speaking at once. "We haven't eaten in so long." The mirror shattered. I don't remember much after that. I woke up on my bathroom floor, shaking violently. My ears were ringing, my head pounding. The mirror was perfectly intact. No writing, No cracks, like nothing had ever happened, but I knew it had, because the whispers, they hadn't stopped. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. Something watching, something waiting. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. I reached for it with trembling fingers. A new video from my own YouTube channel, but I hadn't uploaded anything. The thumbnail was dark, just a black screen. The title, Who Woke Up First? My mouth went dry. My entire body went cold. I didn't want to press play. I didn't want to know, but my hands moved on their own. The video started. The screen stayed black for the first few seconds. No sound. Then, a grainy night vision shot. The nursery. The crib I had slept in. The walls, still covered in smeared, jagged writing. The camera was moving, like someone was holding it, walking slowly toward the crib. And then, I saw myself, lying there, asleep. My breath hitched. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. The camera got closer. A shadow rose up from behind the crib. Tall, unnatural, arms too long, head tilted. I could see it breathing. The camera inched closer, closer, until it was hovering right over my sleeping body. Then, the screen glitched. The audio warped. A voice, distorted and inhuman, came through the speakers. You should have never woken up. And then, the final frame. I felt my stomach drop, because it wasn't the nursery anymore. It was my bedroom, and I was asleep in my bed, and the shadow was standing over me. The video cut to black, and then a notification popped up. Someone had commented. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. I clicked on the comment section. One user, anonymous, no profile picture, no name, just one sentence. Check your closet. I stared at the words, my skin crawling, and then a soft creak from the other side of my room, from my closet. I wasn't alone, not anymore, and I don't think I ever will be again. The comment sat on my screen like a death sentence. Check your closet. And then, a sound. A slow, deep creak from the other side of my room. I stopped breathing. I didn't turn my head. I didn't move. Because I knew that if I looked, something would be looking back. The air in my room felt wrong, like it was thicker, heavier, pressing down on me. My laptop screen dimmed, the glow barely illuminating my hands. They were shaking. My pulse hammered in my throat. And then slowly, a shadow slid across my bedroom wall. Not a normal shadow. Too tall, too thin, too fucking wrong. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn the screen off, shut my eyes, pretend I hadn't seen anything. But then, something inside the closet moved. A whisper, so close to the door, I felt it in my bones. A sound that wasn't entirely human. He's still awake. My stomach flipped. My throat closed. I should have run. I should have gotten the fuck out of there. But instead, I turned, and I looked, and the closet door was open. Just an inch. Just enough for something to peek through. And it was. A sliver of pale gray skin. A mouth. A grinning mouth. And then, a single rotting hand reached out. Long fingers, splitting at the tips. Nails like shards of broken glass. It twitched. And then, the door burst open. A horrible, wet screech filled my room. The light flickered. Once. Twice. And everything went black. I don't know how long I was out. I woke up somewhere else. Not my room. Not my apartment. Somewhere. Worse. The floor was wet. Cold. The air reeked of rot, piss, and something metallic. I sat up, my head spinning, my body shaking so hard I could barely breathe. And then, the walls shifted. I wasn't alone. I tried to move, but something scraped against my wrists. Handcuffs. Thick, rusted metal, digging into my skin. I yanked. Once, twice, harder, until I felt something warm slide down my fingers. Blood. A dim, flickering light buzzed overhead. And then I saw them. The walls. They weren't walls at all. They were cradles. Hundreds of them, stacked on top of each other. Small, wooden, rotting. And inside them, bodies, children, some fresh, some skeletal, some still twitching, and all of them staring at me, mouths open in silent screams. I choked on my own breath. I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering so violently I thought my ribs would snap. That's when I saw the door, a single wooden door at the far end of the room, and above it, more writing, carved into the wood. Who woke up first? And then, a new sound. Something. Breathing. Right behind me. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to fucking look. But I did. I turned. And it was standing there. The thing from the orphanage. The parent. Its body was twisted. Flesh folded over itself, like melting wax. Its arms dragged along the floor. Nails scraping deep gashes into the wood. But its face. Oh God. Its face was stitched together. Not like the thing in my mirror. This was worse. Different pieces of different faces. A child's cheek. A man's jaw. A woman's eye. Bloodshot and still moving. The stitches were fresh. Still bleeding. And then it spoke. A horrible, choking gurgle, like something was crawling up its throat. It smiled. And in 1,000 different voices, all speaking at once, it said, "Time to sleep." I don't remember running. I don't remember breaking through the door or the feeling of splinters in my hands. I just remember screaming. I ran through hallways that never ended, past cribs filled with twitching bodies, past shadows that reached for me, crying, laughing, whispering my name, past a mirror where I saw something else wearing my face. And then I was falling, plunging into darkness. I woke up in my bed, back home. My wrists were raw, bleeding. My room smelled like rot. And my closet was open, not an inch, not a crack, wide open. And inside, a single wooden crib, rocking back and forth, empty, except for the note. A piece of paper folded neatly, with one sentence, scrawled in jagged black ink. You woke up first. I didn't go back to sleep. I didn't even blink, because I knew I wasn't alone anymore, and I never would be again. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my closet, at the crib inside, at the way it rocked gently, as if something was still inside it. The note was still clutched in my hand, my fingers cramping around the paper. You woke up first. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself this was all a dream, that none of it had really happened. But then, the crib stopped rocking, and something inside it exhaled, a long, slow, rattling breath, like lungs that hadn't been used in years. And then, a voice, software sweet, a whisper, crawling its way under my skin. You should have stayed asleep. I bolted. I grabbed my car keys, my phone, nothing else. I didn't even stop to put on shoes. I ran out of my apartment, flew down the stairs 2 at a time, burst into the parking lot, and froze. My car. It was already running. The headlights glared at me, blinding. The driver's side door was open, and someone was sitting inside. No, not someone. Something. It turned its head so slowly, I thought I'd throw up, and grinned. A child's face, skin gray and peeling, lips sewn shut, but the thread was snapping. One stitch, then another, then another. It was trying to speak, and then it laughed, a small, delighted giggle, and the radio in my car blared to life. A voice, garbled, layered, inhuman. A single sentence, repeating, "We're not done playing." I turned and ran. I didn't know where. I didn't care. Just away. I ran until my lungs felt like they were splitting apart. I had no plan, no destination. And then I saw the sign. A gas station. Bright lights. A person inside. I practically threw myself against the door, shoving it open so violently that the cashier, some college-age kid, jumped back. His name tag said Josh. Josh looked me up and down, barefoot, sweating, probably looking like a full-blown psychopath. "Dude," he started. I grabbed his wrist. "You need to help me." His expression shifted. Wariness, suspicion. I didn't care. I turned, pointed toward the parking lot. No car, no running engine, no headlights, just empty pavement. And then I saw it, a shadow, standing at the edge of the lot, tall, thin, watching. Josh followed my gaze. Then he frowned. "Man, there's nothing there." I grabbed his shirt. "You don't fucking see that." His brow furrowed. He opened his mouth to argue. And then the store lights flickered, and something thumped against the windows. Not once, not twice. Over and over and over. Josh's breath hitched. I turned, and my stomach dropped. Handprints, dozens of them. Small, too small. Smeared across the glass, pressed so hard that the skin must have been splitting open. And then, a face, a child's face, smiling at me. But the eyes, they weren't human anymore. Just black, endless pits. And then, a small hand curled into a fist, and it knocked on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. The same knock I had heard at the orphanage, the same one from my closet. And then, Josh screamed. I don't remember what happened next. I think I blacked out. I think my mind refused to process it. Because when I came back to myself, Josh was gone. The store was dark, and I was standing in the middle of the aisle, holding a baby monitor. A static-filled, old baby monitor. I don't know how it got there. I don't know where it came from. But then, the static shifted, and a voice came through. So soft, so gentle. "Go back to bed." I dropped the monitor and ran. I ran until my legs gave out beneath me. That was 3 days ago. Josh is missing. No one remembers him working at the gas station. No one remembers him at all. The police found my car in an alley 3 miles from my apartment. The doors were locked from the inside. The seats were torn open. And in the back seat, a crib, rocking, empty, except for the note. Folded, neat, a new message. "You can't wake up if you never sleep." I haven't slept since, and I don't think I ever will again, because every time I close my eyes, I hear them, whispering, laughing, waiting. And the worst part, I think I know what happens when I finally pass out, because last night, I looked in the mirror, and my reflection blinked, but I didn't. I clean crime scenes and holder houses on the dark web for living. Today I saw something I didn't understand. Look, I know how this sounds. Dark web, crime scenes, hoarder houses. It sounds like some edgy horror movie plot. But this is my real life. It's not glamorous. It's not some Hollywood thriller. It's dirty, dangerous, and sometimes it's just straight up wrong. I work as a cleaner, not the kind that scrubs your office desk or wipes down tables at Starbucks. No, I clean up messes that can't be seen. Crime scenes, abandoned buildings, hoarder houses, places where bad things happened, and I don't get my jobs through Craigslist or some legit cleaning agency. I get them through a site on the dark web. Most people hear dark web and think of hitmen, human trafficking, or buying illegal stuff. And yeah, that's all there. But there's also a whole underground market for services people don't want on record. That's where I come in. The website I use, let's just call it Red Room Connect, is basically a job board, but instead of fixing plumbing or coding websites, you're erasing evidence. I know what you're thinking. Why the hell would anyone do this? Simple. Money. A single job can pay anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, depending on how bad it is. Blood cleanup? That's $10,000 easy. A hoarder house full of dead animals, and God knows what? $15,000. And the worst ones, the ones I try to avoid, where there's a body that wasn't found by the cops yet. That's retirement money right there. I've been doing this for 3 years. I've seen some sick stuff, but nothing prepared me for what I saw last week. The job offer. It started like any other gig. I got a notification through my burner phone. The message was short, as usual. Job ID, number 4999381. Location, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Type, hoarder/biohazard cleanup. Payout, $22,500. Details, standard cleanup. No bodies, no police involvement. ETA, 24 hours. No bodies. That was good. I accepted, and within minutes, I got the details. Some old house in Atlantic City, near a rundown strip of casinos and boarded up liquor stores. The client, whoever they were, had left a key in a lockbox on the back door. When I arrived, it was 2 a.m. I always work at night. Less eyes on me. The house was exactly what I expected. A 2-story Victorian, windows covered in grime, yard overgrown like it hadn't been touched in a decade. There were no cars outside, no neighbors watching. Perfect. I put on my gear, heavy-duty gloves, respirator mask, hazmat suit, because if I've learned anything in this job, it's that you don't want to breathe in what's inside these places. The second I opened the door, I knew something was off. The house of rot. The stench hit me first. If you've never smelled a hoarder house before, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a mix of wet dog, mold, and something sweet, but in a way that makes your stomach turn. That's rot. That's something dead. The living room was stacked to the ceiling with garbage, old newspapers, rotting food containers, broken furniture. I saw rats scurrying between the piles, their eyes glowing in my flashlight. This wasn't new to me. I've seen houses where you had to crawl over mountains of trash just to get inside. But as I moved deeper in, I started seeing strange things. 1. The walls. Someone had written on them. Not graffiti, not gang tags. Just words, over and over, like a madman had taken a Sharpie and lost his mind. Phrases like, "He is coming. Do not open the door. It sees you." I figured it was some paranoid schizophrenic. Hoarder houses are full of mentally ill people who just lost their grip on reality. But then I saw the scratches. Deep, uneven gouges in the drywall, like someone had been clawing at it with their bare hands. 2. The photos. In the hallway, there were framed pictures on the walls. Normal at first. Old black and white family portraits. But as I kept walking, the faces changed. They became wrong. Their eyes were blacked out. Their mouths were missing. In one of the frames, the faces were scratched out entirely, replaced with deep, jagged X's. That was the first time I felt something watching me. The room I shouldn't have opened. I made my way upstairs. My job was to clear out biohazards, and the real mess is always where people live. The hallway was dark. My flashlight flickered. At the end of the hall, there was a door. Unlike the others, this one was different. Newer, stronger. Someone had installed extra locks on it, like they were trying to keep something in. My gut told me to ignore it. Just clean up and leave. But I'm an idiot. I unlocked the door. The room was empty. No furniture, no trash. Just one chair in the middle. And something on the walls. More writing. But this time, it wasn't just words. It was dates. Hundreds of them, written in perfect, even lines. I ran my flashlight across the walls, my brain struggling to understand. The dates stretched back decades, some from the 1950s, some from the 1800s. Then I saw the last date, tomorrow's date, and underneath it, in thick smeared letters, "He comes when you see him." I felt my chest tighten. The air in the room was wrong, heavy, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. My flashlight flickered again. Then I heard it, a slow, deliberate creak, like footsteps, coming from the attic above me. I didn't stick around. I sprinted out of that house, leaving half my gear behind. I jumped in my truck, hands shaking, and tore down the street without looking back. That was 2 nights ago. This morning, I got a new message from Red Room Connect. Job ID, number 4, 99382. Location, your home. Type, cleanup, payout, NA. Details, he sees you now. I haven't left my apartment since, because no matter where I go, I feel it. Something watching me, something waiting, and I have no idea what happens next. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn house. The writing on the walls, the dates, the last one, written in smeared, almost desperate strokes. Tomorrow's date. And now, tomorrow was today. I sat in my apartment, the message from Red Room Connect still glowing on my phone. My hands were shaking. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Job ID, number 4, 99382. Location, your home. Type, cleanup, payout, NA. Details, he sees you now. I kept telling myself it was a prank. Some sick bastard on the dark web messing with me. But that didn't explain the feeling in my gut. It didn't explain why I felt like I was being watched. I checked every lock on my door, twice. I shut all my windows. I turned off every light, except the dim glow from my laptop screen. I had a knife on the table next to me, though I knew deep down that a knife wouldn't do shit against whatever was out there. Then, around 3 a.m., my Wi-Fi cut out. The router lights blinked red. No warning, no disconnection notice, just dead. That's when I heard the first tap. Software deliberate. Glass on glass. I turned my head so fast my neck cracked. The sound was coming from my window. I live on the 3rd floor. My stomach dropped. Another tap. Then a scrape. Something was dragging along the glass. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My apartment was pitch black except for the laptop screen. I sat frozen, my pulse hammering in my throat. Then, in the dim glow, I saw something reflect off the screen. A silhouette, not standing outside the window, standing behind me. I spun so fast I knocked over my chair. My knife was in my hand before I could think. But there was nothing there. Nothing except the closet door, slightly open. That door was closed before. I was sure of it. The air felt thick, like the whole apartment was pressurized, like something was waiting for me to open that door. I wanted to leave. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. But there was only one way out, the hallway leading to my front door, and it was dark. Darker than it should have been, like the shadows were stretching too far, swallowing the light. Then my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I stared at it, heart pounding. Slowly, I picked up. I didn't say anything. I just listened. At first, it was silence. Then I heard breathing, shallow, wet, like someone was too close to the mic. And then, in a voice that didn't sound entirely human, I heard 2 words. Look inside. Click. I threw my phone across the room. I should have run. I should have grabbed my keys and gotten the hell out. But something compelled me. Some twisted, unnatural curiosity forced my body to move toward the closet door. The crack was barely an inch wide, just enough to see darkness beyond. I reached out. My hand shook as I touched the door. Then, something inside the closet moved. Not a shuffle, not a creak. It was fast, a jerk, like whatever was in there had been waiting for me to get close. I stumbled back, heart slamming into my ribs. The knife slipped from my fingers, clattering on the floor. Then I saw it. A hand. Long, thin fingers, grayish pale, with too many joints. It reached out slowly, pressing against the inside of the door, fingers splaying. And then it knocked. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember throwing the door open. I just remember sprinting down the hall, hearing something crawl out of that closet behind me. Not footsteps. Crawling. I didn't stop. Not when I heard the thing whispering my name. Not when I felt the air turn freezing behind me. I hit the stairwell, practically leaping down flights of stairs, almost breaking my ankle on the last step. When I burst into the parking lot, everything was silent. No cars, no wind, just dead air. And then, my phone buzzed again. I looked down. Another message from Red Room Connect. Job ID, number 4, 99383. Location, pending. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, you let him out. I got in my truck and drove. I don't even know where I was going. I just needed to be somewhere else. But no matter how far I go, I know the truth now. This wasn't a job. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. Something that was never meant to be found. And now, it's following me. I don't remember driving. I remember the road blurring under my headlights, the highway stretching endlessly into blackness. I remember gripping the wheel so tight my fingers went numb. But I don't remember deciding to leave. It was like my body had taken over, like some primal part of my brain knew that staying in that apartment, staying anywhere even remotely familiar, was a death sentence. It was almost 4 a.m. when I finally stopped. A gas station, middle of nowhere, just off I-95. One of those shitty places with flickering lights, dead flies in the corners, and a bathroom that looks like a crime scene. I parked at the far end of the lot, where the cameras couldn't see me, and just sat there, shaking. My phone was still in my lap. The last message from Red Room Connect stared back at me. Job ID, number 4, 99383. Location, pending. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, you let him out. I still didn't know what I let out, but I could feel it. Like an absence, a vacuum in the air around me. A presence so wrong, it left a hollow pit in my stomach. The lights in the gas station flickered, and then my phone buzzed again. A call. No caller ID. I didn't want to answer. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to throw the phone out the window and keep driving, but my hand moved on its own. My thumb hovered over the screen for half a second before I swiped up. I put the phone to my ear. Silence. Then, shuffling. Not static. Not breathing. Just the faintest, wet movement, like something dragging across the floor. Then, a voice. Low, distorted. Where are you going? I almost dropped the phone. It sounded wrong, like it was being played backward, syllables stretched and warped. I hung up. Immediately, my phone buzzed again. Same no caller ID. This time, I didn't answer. I stepped out of the truck, trying to breathe, trying to get my heartbeat under control. The cold air hit my skin like needles. The gas station was empty. No clerk at the counter, no cars in the lot. Just the buzzing of a flickering neon sign that read, Open 24 hours. I took a step toward the door. The moment I did, the streetlight above me went out. Total darkness. And then, the glass door to the gas station slid open on its own. I froze. I could still hear the hum of the refrigerators inside, see the rows of snacks and cheap souvenirs. But something about the place felt wrong. I stepped inside. The door slid shut behind me. It was colder in here than outside. The first thing I noticed was the security camera monitor behind the counter. One of those old CRT screens showing the different angles of the store in grainy black and white. I glanced up at it, scanning the feeds. Aisle 1, empty. Aisle 2, empty. Aisle 3. Someone was standing there, tall, too tall, thin to the point of being wrong, limbs slightly bent at unnatural angles. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing was there. But when I looked back at the monitor, the thing had turned its head. It was looking directly at the camera now. I ran. I didn't even think. I sprinted for the door, expecting it to slide open like before. It didn't. I slammed into it, shoulder first, nearly dislocating my arm. The glass didn't budge. I turned, gasping for air. The store was silent now. Even the refrigerators had stopped humming. And then, down aisle 3, I heard breathing. Deep, slow, right behind the shelves. I backed away, pressing against the door. My own reflection stared at me in the glass, wide-eyed, trembling. Then, from the aisles, a long, thin hand reached around the shelf. Fingers too long, skin grayish and stretched. It gripped the metal shelf, tensed. Then, it pulled itself into view. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Its head was wrong. Not like an animal, not like a person. Stretched, elongated, with a face that looked almost human. But the proportions were off. The mouth was too wide. The eyes were black pits, and the skin looked like it had been peeled back and stitched together wrong. It opened its mouth. It didn't speak. It grinned. A sound came from deep inside its throat. Not a growl, not a breath. A clicking noise. Fast, repetitive, inhuman. My vision blurred. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward. Then, my phone buzzed. The thing stopped. The sound cut off. I fumbled for my pocket, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. Another message from Red Room Connect. Job ID, number 4, 99384. Location, 175 miles away. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, run. I didn't question it. I bolted. The glass door slid open on its own this time, almost throwing me forward. I stumbled into the parking lot, barely catching myself. I risked one last look over my shoulder. The thing was still standing in the aisle, watching me, but its head was tilted now, like it was confused, like it was waiting for something. I didn't wait to find out what. I dove into my truck, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot so fast my tires screeched. The gas station shrank in the rearview mirror, disappearing into the night. My hands were still shaking. I checked my phone again, rereading the message. 175 miles away. I didn't know what I was running toward, but I knew, deep in my gut, that I wasn't running from a person. I was running from something that should have never existed. And somehow, it knew my name. I drove until my gas tank was nearly dry. I don't remember most of it. Just long, empty highways, road signs I couldn't read because my vision kept blurring, and the feeling that if I looked in the rearview mirror for too long, I'd see something I wasn't supposed to. I had no idea where I was going. All I had was the message from Red Room Connect. Job ID, number 499384. Location, 175 miles away. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, run. I checked my odometer. I had driven 162 miles. Something told me I was almost there. The highway had gotten narrower, the gas stations and motels disappearing, until it was just me, my truck, and the endless void of the night. The road signs had stopped making sense. Random numbers, missing letters, like they were eroding into something unrecognizable. Then, at mile 175 exactly, my truck shut off. No sputtering, no warning, just dead. The headlights cut out, leaving me in total darkness. I sat there, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My breathing sounded too loud in the silence. Then, my phone buzzed. Another message. Job ID, number 499385. Location, you've arrived. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, do not exit the vehicle. Do not look at it. Do not listen to it. My blood turned ice cold. I slowly reached for my phone, careful not to make a sound. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Then, I noticed something. The rearview mirror. It was fogging up, like something was breathing behind me. I didn't look. I couldn't. I kept my eyes locked on the screen, on that one sentence. Do not exit the vehicle. Do not look at it. Do not listen to it. Then, a tap on the window. Not a knock. A tap. Light. Deliberate. Testing. My lungs locked up. I wanted to turn my head. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to look. But I forced myself to stay still, to keep staring at my phone screen like it was my only lifeline. Another tap. Then, a whisper. Too close. Right by my ear. Let me in. My vision blurred. My body started shaking uncontrollably. Then, I felt something press against the glass. Not a hand. Not a face. Something wrong. It made a wet, stretching sound, like skin pulling away from bone. A shape that shouldn't exist. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Do not move. It can't see you if you don't move. I stopped breathing. The thing outside shifted. I heard it drag along the side of the truck. Nails, or something worse, scraping against the metal. Then, a voice. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was my own voice. Hey, open the door, man. It's me. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth felt like they were cracking. Come on, open up. It sounded exactly like me. The tone, the rhythm, even the slight rasp in my throat from breathing too hard. But underneath it, buried deep in the words, was something else. Something that wasn't human. I bit down on my lip, hard enough to taste blood. It circled the truck, slow and methodical. The windows fogged up completely now. I could hear it pressing against the glass, shifting, adjusting. Then, it did something that nearly made me scream. It laughed. Not like a person, not like me. The laugh was distorted, like a recording being played too fast and too slow at the same time. Like it was trying to understand what laughter was, but didn't quite get it right. Then, it stopped. Silence. The air felt wrong. Then, a new message. When the static starts, drive. no matter what. I barely had time to process it before the radio turned on by itself, blast in full volume. But it wasn't music, it was static, loud, crackling, mixed with something else. Breathing. The thing outside twitched. I heard it jerk back, like the sound had startled it. Then, my truck roared back to life. I didn't think. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched. The engine screamed as I peeled away from whatever was outside that truck. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't check if it was still following. I just drove. The road stretched into the horizon, endless and empty. My heart pounded against my ribs. My hands ached from how tight I was gripping the wheel. Then, after what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed one last time. Job complete. I almost threw up. I didn't know where I was. The sun was starting to rise now, casting a dull, gray light over the endless road ahead. But I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Not ever. Because whatever I had seen, whatever had pretended to be me, was still out there. And somehow, I knew it wasn't done with me yet. The job was complete. That's what the message said. Job complete. But I knew that was bullshit. Because even as I drove down that empty highway, watching the sunrise bleed red across the sky, I could still feel it. The thing that had been outside my truck. The thing that had pretended to be me. It was still here. Not behind me. Not in the mirrors. Inside me. I never made it home. I drove for hours. No destination, no plan. Just putting as much distance between myself and that gas station as humanly possible. But it didn't matter. No matter how far I went, that feeling never left. That cold, gnawing sensation in my gut, like something was watching me from just outside my field of vision. At some point, my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look, but I knew deep down that I had to. I glanced at the screen. Job ID, number 499386. Location, pending. Type, cleanup. Payout, NA. Details, you are infected. I slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop in the middle of the deserted highway. Dust and gravel kicked up around me, catching the early morning light like tiny sparks. Infected. What the fuck did that mean? I gripped the wheel, breathing hard, trying to think. Then, the static started again. The radio clicked on by itself, blasting that same horrible crackling distortion. Only this time, I heard something else underneath it. Voices, hundreds of them, layered over each other, overlapping, whispering, screaming, laughing, and one of them was mine. Let me in. Number. No. I ripped the radio out of the dashboard, wires snapping in my hands. The sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside my head now. I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling. I typed out a reply. What does this mean? What the hell is happening to me? I hit send. Nothing. The highway stretched out in both directions, empty, silent. The whole world felt dead. Then finally, my phone buzzed. You brought it with you. You are the cleanup. I nearly dropped the phone. I stared at the words until they didn't make sense anymore, until they blurred into an unreadable mess. Then slowly, I looked up, and I saw the road sign. It hadn't been there before. A massive, rusted green sign hanging over the highway. The letters were wrong, warped, stretched, rearranging themselves, even as I tried to read them. But I understood. Welcome to nowhere. Something is growing inside me. I don't remember getting out of the truck. 1 second, I was gripping the wheel so hard my fingernails were digging into my skin. The next, I was standing in the middle of the road, the heat from the asphalt seeping into my boots. The air felt thick, like I was standing inside a vacuum, the pressure building behind my eyes. Then, a sharp stab in my stomach. I doubled over, gagging, vision swimming. It felt like something was writhing inside me, twisting, pressing against my ribs from the inside. I lifted my shirt, and that's when I saw it. The writing. The same writing from the house, carved into my skin. Not fresh wounds, not scabs, but scars, like they'd been there for years. Do not open the door. He is coming. It sees you. And then, at the very bottom, just above my navel, one last line. You are not you. I started shaking. I pressed my hands against the scars, tracing the letters, feeling the deep ridges where my skin had healed wrong. This wasn't possible. I had never seen these before, but somehow they had always been there. Then, from somewhere deep inside me, I felt something move, something shift, something wake up, and that's when I finally understood. There was never a job. This whole time, I thought I was cleaning up after something, a crime scene, a hoarder house, a thing that shouldn't exist. But I wasn't. I was the cleanup. I was the thing that wasn't supposed to exist. I'd been hired to erase myself, and now I was too late. Because whatever had come out of that room in Atlantic City, whatever I had let out, it wasn't behind me. It wasn't following me. It was wearing me, like a suit, like a puppet. And I had been watching myself unravel this entire time. I felt my legs move before I told them to. I heard my bones shift before I commanded them to. I lifted my hands, and they weren't mine anymore. The fingers were too long. The joints bent in the wrong places. The skin didn't fit right. I opened my mouth, and I heard myself laugh. Fast, repetitive, not human. The last message from Red Room Connect flashed on my phone screen, the letters twisting, rearranging themselves one final time. Job complete. Welcome home. I tried to scream, but my mouth wasn't mine anymore, and neither was I.